Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the weekly Armchair Sports Talk. This is your United podcast. This is Devil's Advocate. I'm your host, Keane, and joined today by a very good friend of mine here today, joined by local Clonmel man Dale O Donnell from Stretty News and Strettycast. And we're here today to talk all things Manchester United. We're going to talk all the latest news, talk about Frankie de Jong. Is that happening? We kind of gauge Man United fans' opinion on that. Also, we chat about the upcoming season, Eric Ten Hag, and what we both believe Eric Ten Hag needs next season in terms of personnel, but also obviously support from the club as well. But Dale, first of all, haven't had a chat with you in quite some time. How are you? It's been a while.
It's been a while. It's been a busy few months, chopping and changing managers and not knowing really what direction this club is taking. You know, we're seeing lots of changes. We're seeing personnel within the club leaving, but I think me and you both as fans, we're still kind of caught in kind of waiting to see our actions louder than words. You know, we hear this thing that they're going to change the way the Woodward is gone now. Arnold doesn't want to have be dealing with football matters, but at the end of the day, this club is still being run by the Glazer family, and that's the biggest worry I think a lot of fans have.
Yeah, 100%. And like we did see the recent video circulating on social media regarding Richard Arnold meeting Manchester United fans in his local pub, and they did discuss many things in terms of his hopes for the direction of the football club going forward, but like also as well his role as well. And I think, look, as you said, I think actions will speak, I think, a lot louder than words in terms of kind of what's been said in the last couple of days and also what's been drip fed to the media as well, Dale. We actually haven't had a chat on a podcast since Eric Ten Hag has been hired as Manchester United permanent manager. Obviously, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's successor, obviously following Ralph Rangnick's interim basis as well. And just to kind of catch up with you in terms of the appointments, Eric Ten Hag, obviously we see his body of work at Ajax. He done fantastic work at Ajax, and obviously, you know, in the Champions League as well, we've seen do a great run there as well as manager of Ajax. In terms of like post Sir Alex Ferguson, if we look at like the managers we've hired post Sir Alex, would you say this is the first one we're getting probably in their prime to a post Sir Alex?
We certainly hope so, because the managers that we appointed in the past, they weren't in their prime. We appointed them because of their record and what they had done in their careers. And Van Gaal, you look at his body of work, you know, he was definitely past his best. Jose Mourinho, I think in hindsight, you could say before he came to Manchester United, he was past his best. The time at Real Madrid was a bad spell for him. I know he was successful there, but the way in which it ended on a very sour note. And I think Mourinho took that with him in other jobs. And that's why he's not quite at the top anymore. He doesn't have that trust with his players. But you look at Ten Hag, and I think you look at some of the managers that Manchester United are the level we're trying to get to, the level that Man City are at, the level even the Liverpool are at, and Chelsea, they won the Champions League not long ago. And some of these clubs take risks with managers, and they don't have to have loads of experience in the Premier League and that kind of thing. And I think United are kind of taking a bit of a gamble here. You know, Ten Hag is a promising manager, but he's not. He hasn't done everything yet. His chapters still have to be written. And I think that's the exciting part about this, is that when he comes to Manchester United, he's still writing his book. You know, he hasn't won anything yet. He hasn't won a Champions League. He hasn't won a Premier League. He's won Eredivisie titles, but he doesn't want to retire and just look at that. You know, he wants to do much more. So we got at least a manager with a bit of hunger. And I think other managers might have lacked that, because with Mourinho, when things weren't going right, instead of trying to fix it, he was worried about his reputation and him being the special one. He never wanted to shift that. With Ten Hag, I think Manchester United, what they're hoping for is that they can have a bit of unity and try to move in the same direction. But in order for that to happen, the club need to realise that they have to back the manager, because in the past, we can slate previous managers. And I think a lot of the managers we bring up, we talk about Solskjaer, we'll have people commenting and criticising him that don't like him. We'll talk about Mourinho the same way. All of the managers will be the same way. But every single one of them was marginalised by the Glazer family. Whether it was, we can all talk about various transfer windows and transfer decisions and not going for players that a certain manager wants. That's an example of a football club not backing a manager. And we can't have that anymore. There has to be a clear sight in place in the coming 2 to 3 transfer windows. The fans can see a team is being built and the manager is getting what he wants. I think Arnold kind of touched on that in his meeting with fans because he knows that it's a touchy topic. Ed Woodward vetoed decisions on previous managers, and that can't continue.
100%. I think we've seen many different examples of Woodward's dealings in Man United in terms of certain signings, and we all know that famous quote: "We can only do things other football clubs can dream of." And with that, obviously, I think that kind of bit us in the backside, and obviously in this last kind of decade. But you mentioned obviously Richard Arnold, and he obviously, it's been documented in the last couple of days. He did meet Man United fans, and there's been numerous things said. One thing he did say is that he's been in obviously constant communication with fans. He's replying to every email. I sent one. I got one back from himself though in that regard. But do you think like this level of communication? Do you think this could be something that could be sustained from the club? That I suppose if they do want to go in this new direction, now we know obviously the Glazers have crippled this football club with debt. They have been, I suppose, haven't communicated with us at all. But even during Ed Woodward's era, we never really got much communication from him. We haven't seen interviews, or there was lack of communication from him towards the fans. Do you think Richard Arnold may want to, I suppose, try to get away from that Ed Woodward era and that kind of, I suppose, the way the football club has been ran, I suppose, that closed shop radio silence that we've had in the last decade? Do you think he wants to get away from that?
I think from listening to the exchange, the video clips that were leaked, I think Richard Arnold would like to get away from that. But Richard Arnold is part of it. Ultimately, Richard Arnold has been a Manchester United for years, has held previous roles. He's very much a Glazer Scrooge, has been very much part of their decision-making process in the past. And whether his previous comments strike a chord with fans, we shouldn't forget what he's been doing the past few years. Come on, it's a wake-up call because we might hear something. And I was guilty of it on Saturday when he said something about Woodward. I kind of liked it. And then I sat back and I kind of thought more about it. And I was thinking, you were part of decisions back then. You taking no responsibility whatsoever. What about the 23 or 25 George Clooney quote you came out with years ago? Absolute rubbish. Do you still stand by that? So what Arnold doesn't have a clean page. I think like a few people at the club that are in these new roles, he needs to prove himself. And he's done nothing yet that's really impressed me, bar confronting fans and coming out and diffusing the situation and meeting people. That's a great gesture. We don't see enough of that, and we probably won't see more of it because the way things were leaked during the week. But just on the communication thing and whether the club can sustain that, this goes back to after the European Super League announcement when the club, Joe Glazer, had a big statement on the club website outlining what the club are going to do over the coming so long. If you read through that to this date, a lot of it, most of it, is false promises. So when the club do open up and talk to fans, yeah, we might get an email or we might get a message or something back. But is it worth anything? Is it any truth? Can we believe it? With the Glazers, don't stick to promises, false promises, if anything. And as I said at the start of this podcast, it's actions speak louder than words, and that's what we need to see in the coming 2 to 3 years. If the Glazers are actually want to change the way this club is being run, because this is not sustainable. This is not sustainable, and you can see as well with the way the club is operating in the transfer window, it's kind of cautious, hesitant. Other big clubs aren't like that. Other clubs that are being run better aren't like that. You look at Real Madrid, who if you think about it, put us in a bit of an awkward situation in our bid to sign Frankie de Jong, because with Tuchemeni, a few months ago, people were saying you could get him for 50 million. He went for 100 million. Unproven midfielder. So that ups the price then of other players in the market. But that Real Madrid weren't cautious doing that. He was the player they wanted this summer. They missed out on Mbappe. They went out and they got him. Who's a player that we're doing that for? We're Manchester United. We're cautious. You want a player, just go and get him. And make him your number one signing. Make him first in pre-season. He's part of the squad. He's part of this new chapter. But United haven't done that. We've 7 days till pre-season starts. Frankie de Jong should be at training, but right now, don't know.
Yeah, and I think it's a deal that's more or less been dragging on like the last 6 weeks. Like the room, like there's been talk like the last 6 weeks whether we're interested. Talks are progressing, but it seems like at the moment that's simply where we are. Like from what I've been reading recently, we're a bit far away from what Barcelona's valuation is on the bid. But Frankie De Jong's one of the best midfield players in the world. Like in that number 8 position, he's one of the best in there. And you talk, I know I'll touch on Pogba in a minute. I want to get your opinion on something, but like you're getting rid of a player like Paul Pogba. To be fair, like look, he splits fan opinion and quite rightly so. There's been times where he's been good. There's sometimes he's been very bad in the United shirt. But like a player of his experience, we've lost that really in midfield. There's a hole in like that midfield that we do need to fill. And Frankie De Jong, if not, is a replacement, maybe even an upgrade. In that position. And like for me, I'm always trying to see, why aren't we first? Do you know what I mean? Tchouaméni was done quick. Manchester City had Julian Alvarez sorted back in January. The Haaland deal has been progressing the last couple of months. You look at even Spurs. Like, look, I know Steve will rib me over this, but like Spurs are getting their deals done. Like Perisic, do you know what I mean? Bissouma, Spence coming in from Forest, who I think, by the way, is a brilliant signing for them. Like in the right back position. Look, we're struggling at the moment in the fullbacks. Like you look at the clubs making shrewd little signings and getting their players in for pre-season, especially for like Conte as well, being a new manager at Spurs. They're giving them kind of the full backing and really showing that they believe in his philosophy and they want to kind of him to move forward. It's very worrying that we've been talking to one player for 6 weeks now. Obviously, other clubs like they talk to a couple and they get a couple of done at a time. But part of me is just thinking, is they circa 2013 again? Because when you think about it, you have a new manager, you have a new CEO, you have like new people moving within the club internally, and it's almost like we're seeing the same kind of speed in terms of that rebuild as well. It's kind of we're being sold a rebuild, but at the moment there's no actions. I think that's where, look, on social media quite often you can see a lot of overreaction, and we always see it on various outlets, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, whatever it may be. You see fans kind of losing the plot, and sometimes I can be guilty of it as well. But when you kind of look at it, even if we have like people expect we should have 3 or 4 in by now, fair enough, but that's not going to happen. I don't care what anyone says, that's not going to happen. But we should have at least 1 or 2 in for the new manager to kind of help get some of these players in. And like some of the players who've left on freeze, they need to be replaced. Now, can we supplement that with some of the academy players? That remains to be seen. But quite frankly, when you lose players like Pogba, Lingard, players like that who have been in and around the first team the last couple of years, it's very concerning that we're not replacing them. And it's one of them things where if Erik Ten Hag does come in, can he be expected to work with some of these players who have underperformed for quite some time in a United shirt and expect different results? Like, if his philosophy is all about playing football, keeping possession, at the moment we probably don't have, apart from in theory, Donny van de Beek, who has underwhelmed in Man United shirt, can play that type of style of football. And that's where I think Ten Hag needs to be backed and it needs to happen soon. Because as you said, Dale, like pre-season is very soon, and like before we know it, the Premier League season is starting in nearly just over a month's time. That's where it's very concerning in that regard.
Well, it depends. Like in transfer, it depends what you define as actions, because Manchester United have spoken to countless players this summer. Players that I'm aware of that I know they won't be signing. So they talk to loads of players and to find out what their situation is. And then it comes to it that if they miss out on targets, they have a list to fall back on. So I don't think it's quite as bad as back in 2013, because there's some horrendous stories from Ed Woodward's first few transfer exchanges, which we probably haven't got the time to go into.
Yeah, we don't.
But no, I do believe they are speaking to people. I do believe that when it comes to Frankie de Jong being the prime target, there's also not a lot of money there. There's not a lot of money to go out and splash the cash and to really give this squad a makeover the way in which it needs. That money isn't there. And there's talk that they might make a bit of money from selling players. When do Manchester United sell players? Well, we don't. we generally find it very, very difficult to sell players, and there's very
When's
little.
the last time we made a profit, Dale? Dan James is the most recent profit, but before that, when's the last time we made a profit on it there?
Yeah, exactly. It's so that like there you go. We're going to have to cut price with a few players and shift them out the door, but that won't bring up the funds to give this squad the makeover in which it needs, like I said. But I think with Frankie De Jong, he's the prime target. He's the one they're going to try and get in first because he's going to take up the majority of that kitty. And then that gives Ten Hag an idea of what's left, what he can go out and get. And we've seen the Manchester Evening News said today he wants 5 signings. And the name Jurriën Timber, that seems to be uh, a bit. It seems to have gone a bit backwards. Although 2 weeks ago I was convinced that he'd be coming through the door. That seems to have changed. So we'll have to wait and see what the backup options are. But I think very much it'll depend on how much they can get Frankie De Jong for to see what else they can do in the market. If they can get Christian Eriksen in on a free, that just makes so much sense to me.
Yeah.
It makes so much sense to me because we all love this idea about long-termism, and this might be a time where we might need a bit of short-termism. Might be a time in terms of getting that free signing in and not thinking about, his age too much, but getting a player into the right profile for a year or two and helping Ten Hag settle in with this team. I think that would be a really good move. But I wouldn't worry too much because a lot of stuff as well, Keane, is being fed to the media from agents that are trying to hype up kind of their profile of their clients. And Manchester United have to deal with that every year. And then as a result, when fans don't see signings made, they're losing it, And I can see why, but I don't think United fans are impatient because this incompetence that we can feel coming on, it's been the case for years.
Yeah, 100%. I think you have to look at as well, like there's many different factors at the window. I think Ten Hag hasn't seen the likes of James Garner in midfield yet. Like he hasn't seen him come back. Donny van de Beek has to come back. There's other young players in the defence, Bernard, players like that, coming back. Obviously, Laird has to come back as well. There's talk that Ten Hag doesn't fancy Wan-Bissaka a fullback. Like I think he maybe needs probably a time to assess after maybe that De Jong signing. Can I get something out of these younger players because he has a great track record of developing younger players at Ajax, and like this our academy just won the FAU Cup. So like I think when you look at it from that perspective, maybe the club are looking at maybe let's get maybe Eriksen on a free, De Jong in, and maybe let's see if we can get someone else in. And then maybe the club are maybe looking at Ten Hag's body of work at Ajax in terms of building players out of the academy. Maybe Erik Ten Hag can do that. Maybe supplement maybe the squad because we're after losing a couple of players on free transfers. Maybe to supplement the squad for like the Europa League. Maybe you see the likes of Medjugorje, Garnacho. Maybe you can call up to the squad. Maybe getting fast tracked, and maybe one of the fullbacks in Laird or Fernandez as well.
Yeah, look, I think you're right because and as well it's an important point to make too that with all this talk about Ten Hag should be getting this, Ten Hag should be getting that. From a more footballing perspective, the Ten Hag hasn't ever previously been able to demand a signing like Frankie De Jong for this money. He's never been able to. So if he gets this over the line, I'm sure he'll be very, very happy to get a player like that in. But what you're getting to then is in the past with Ajax, they haven't had that money. So he's kind of been in situations where he's had to, build with what he has. And he lost a very good Ajax side pretty much after they got to the Champions League semi-finals, and he built it again to another terrific side that's won 2 straight Eredivisie titles. So he's done that. Now the difference is, and this might change over time, is with a club like Ajax, there's a clear structure in place from academy to first team, and there's a clear way to play. So that transition, players are being prepared from a young age to break into that first team. There's a clear idea. And Manchester United might think they have one, but we don't because the first team doesn't even have a clear way of playing at the moment. We've seen that last season. So that hopefully, what I'm hoping with a manager like Ten Hag is that the first team can get an identity. And over time, if he's a successful manager, that breeds. And that makes it easier for the club to have something sustainable in line. And that's what a forward-thinking football club would do. And sounds great in theory, but we have to remember that we're a football club that's run by businessmen. And I'm not optimistic because I've been optimistic in the past about managers and getting bounces and being really excited about signings and that. And I just think Keane has been kicked out of me. Absolutely
Yeah.
kicked out of me. Even if we had a great summer this year, what I would believe is, oh, the Glazers are only doing it because we got knocked out or because we're not in the Champions League next year. As soon
Doing
as
the
we're
bare
back,
minimum to get back into the top
yeah,
four.
as soon as we get back into it, they'll stop it again. That's what I would be thinking because I'm so used to it. So I don't get on this thing that little spells of optimism anymore, really, because it's short lived. It's short lived.
I think this time, I think it's cautious optimism you kind of have to have,
Yeah.
if anything. And I think that looking at the current spell of the football club, like last season, not gonna lie, traveling over to many games last season, I loved going over, meeting Reds, going over, having a few drinks, going to the game. That all that was great. Despite the football, some of the football I seen was quite horrendous. But there's nothing like going to Old Trafford. And last season, I think the football just took a lot out of us. I think the players not doing the bare minimum took a lot out of me seeing players not chase a ball, like to not make a tackle. Them simple little things like that. If you went down to your local team on a Sunday and you went down and watched your local team on Sunday, you see players bust the gut just to make a tackle. Do you know what I mean? And you'll get back. Whereas I think when Rangnick came in, I think the players just didn't care because they knew he wasn't going to be the manager next season. And I think you've seen a lot of them down tools around that time. And I think
Look,
now,
the big thing as well on that with Ragnick, just quickly, is Arnold, right? He was, again, part of the decision process with Murto when it came to Ralph Ragnick and getting an interim manager. You hire a manager who's not a manager, by the way, he builds football clubs, and you hire him with the plan that he's going to be a consultant at the end of the season. Now, we can talk about how Ragnick pissed that away because he ran off to Austria. But I also remember over the time he was manager, when he was asked about that role by the press every week, he'd say, "We haven't spoken about it. We haven't spoken about it. We haven't spoken about it." That's true. That's true. They weren't speaking about it. So there was no clear dialogue there between those parties of what was actually going to happen. The consultant of football means nothing. What did that mean? What was he going to? We were taking guesses that he's going to be here, he was going to be there. Then it was this rubbish 6 day a month contract. The work at Manchester United you need to do 6 days a month. Is he like, you know what I mean? He just wants a ticket into the museum every fucking week for his family. But it's like, it turned out to be a joke. But ultimately, I think there was a breakdown in communication. I don't think that when Ragnick came in, they made it very clear of what that role was. And ultimately, they hired someone to manage the team to the end of the season that wasn't a manager.
it's a
That's
mess.
why. Maybe the players are taking too much flack because top footballers might be looking at that saying, "Fuck me. What is that about?" I'm not excusing footballers' behavior, but what I'm saying is that's a questionable decision. And then just to get rid of him at the end of the season and not use him for what he's actually good at.
Yeah, I found it very questionable when he left because obviously his body of work, obviously you see him at Salzburg building that club, obviously RB Leipzig as well, what he done there in the background. Consequently, obviously helped breeding Nagelsmann to what he is today, like as well as a manager as well. Like he had a very good body of work in that respect. But yeah, it mystified me. But at the same time, when a consultant is very vague, that role is very vague, and you just know that word consultant. Do you know what I mean? It's just you just know he was not getting a say. And then obviously when they got fed out, they're looking for a deputy director of football. It's like, what's Rangnick's role then?
Mm.
If he's just a consultant, is he jumping on a Zoom call every whatever, as you said, 6 days a month and says like, look, I don't know, man. It was strange. But look, we move on for that. Finally, Dale, just before we wrap up, we touched briefly on next season in terms of your hopes. Obviously, look, 6th place finish last season, very underwhelming. Lucky to be there actually as well. Thanks to Brighton Hove Albion. Thanks, I said to Kieran Maguire, thanks for that win against West Ham on the last day of the season. That was very good. Thanks for that. But looking at next season, obviously, I think we all know probably a title charge is the last thing that Man United are going to be doing next season. But in terms of your hopes and expectations next season, let's say we get a couple of players in, Eriksen, De Jong, and maybe one defender, maybe. Do you look at like Eric Ten Hag's like idea next season for you? Would you be happy with seeing more identity, a recognisable style of play, and also maybe a run the Europa League and get into the top four? Do you think for that would that be a successful season for Eric Ten Hag if that was to take place next season?
To win a trophy?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And get top four and to give an identity of play, I would be over the moon. And I think we all need to be very, very realistic going into this season of what we just seen the last 12 months, the standard of football, it's beyond that too. The dressing room, the players, the attitude, the players don't like each other, the club from top to bottom. For him to fix that in 12 months and make us champions with this group of players. If he does that, like, fuck it, like, that's not going to happen. But I'm hoping for a top four, third place, running one of the cups, win a cup, be brilliant. Be absolutely brilliant and get back into that Champions League. He's already said that his first mission with this club is to get back in the Champions League. And I think with his level of coaching, that's possible. The players have to buy into this. They know now it's a full-time manager. They don't buy into it, they're gone. That has to be writing on the wall. Has to be in the dressing room from day one. You don't like this, you're not going to last. No pussyfooting. You'd be dropped to the reserves and we won't even smell you out the window. That has to happen because the dressing room is a big problem. And if that goes top to bottom, if that's Cristiano Ronaldo causing problems, he has to make the decision that's going to keep him his job. Because down the line, if he holds on to it and it causes bigger problems, he'll lose his job. We've seen it in the past.
Yeah. I think one thing that's stopped is the leaks from the dressing room. Arnold allegedly said that some of the leaks have already left. We can leave that open to interpretation as to who they were. But like in terms of, I
Keane,
think
they're in the roof as well. They're in the roof and the dressing
in the roof as well. Yeah, Jesus Christ, that still hasn't been fixed. Oh, stop! I feel sorry for everyone who sits there and they'll get, especially on a nice rainy day in Manchester, like which is nearly more or less nearly every day. In terms of that, but yeah, look, I agree. I think top four, a recognisable style of play, and like, look, if he can get far into the Europa League, you never know. Like, you never know. Like, I like everyone, like you have the idiots in social media say, it's the Europa League, but it's one of the only trophies Cristiano Ronaldo actually has never won. So
I enjoyed winning it in 2017. I'm not going to lie, and I would enjoy winning it next season.
Yeah, 100%. Dale, I know we're wrapping up there just there now. 2 minutes. I have to ask you one final question. Did you watch the Pogumentary the other day? No.
I did not, I'm afraid. I didn't, but I tell you, I read so much about it that I've no doubt if you have any questions about it, I probably have the answer to it.
I haven't watched it at all myself. I'm not going to say what I'd rather do than watch the Pogumentary. I'll leave that open to, I've said it in the group chat. I'm not going to say it live on air, but like, yeah, I'm not going to watch that. I think it's just obviously more propaganda spreading basically, but to say a £300,000 deal is nothing. I think that's yeah. What's your opinion on that, man?
I think from what I've seen of that quote, right? I think what United were offering him was a 15% rise, right, for a new contract, which, right, for top footballers, when you're getting your new contract, a 15% rise is a kick in the teeth, right? Looking at it, just not at the figures themselves, but the 15%. It's usually more than that. Bruno Fernandes, look at his new contract. That's not 15%. It's much bigger. So that's what Pogba was annoyed about. He thought, I'm on this contract. I'm a big player. But what I believe Manchester United were doing there, back a year ago, I believe this was it Keane? Was it a year ago that was recorded? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this was Manchester United's sign of kind of an elbow that you're getting this or jog on. You're not getting more. You haven't played well enough. You've underperformed. This is your contract. Take it or leave it. And might be Pogba getting a bit annoyed, whatever, but it's actually Manchester United, I think, showing the upper hand of the situation and saying to the player, we're not going to bow to this. Because look at him. He said what? We offered him nothing. That increase, whatever. Is it more than what Juventus are going to pay him? Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it more
160,000.
than what PSG were going to pay him? Yeah, it was. He wasn't getting that money anywhere else. So I don't know what he means by nothing. I think he probably didn't add up his calculations right in his head. 15% increase doesn't sound great, but it's better than the money you're going to be on next season, buddy.
Yeah,
And I'm
absolutely.
delighted. And by the way, I'm delighted because I didn't want him sticking around anyway. When there was talk last season of this money floating around, I know there was lots of fans kind of hoping that we'd keep a star like Paul Pogba around. But when you actually look at the money that was being quoted, sometimes, Keane, there was 400,000 a week being offered. You cannot ever, and there's no biggest Pogba fan in the world that can justify more than 5 performances to show a player that's worth that for United. It's not. So
there would have been no justification. There would have been no justification for it. And if you look at it as well.
And the money that they were actually willing to go to offer him this time, I don't know, was it 290 or whatever? Again, come on. For his output, he's not worth it. And as well, sorry, just to drag on, but again, that documentary shows that over the past year, he knew what his decision was. And if you remember all the times he showed that he wasn't fit throughout the year, he wasn't available, jetting off to this place and that place. That just shows the world by this documentary. He's revealed to everybody that he is, in fact, a mercenary.
Yeah. And it's one of them where, look, it's a shame that it shows, it's a symbolism of how this club was ran. We let him go for free, brought him back for 89 million. He underperformed. Now he's gone for free again. It just shows everything that's kind of wrong. Obviously with the player, but his agent at the time, and also the way the football club was ran. But we're going to wrap it up there, guys. Thanks very much, everyone, for listening. I've seen your comments there, guys. Thanks very much for dropping in here this evening. Also, thanks very much, Dale, for coming on and chatting about United here this evening as well. You can catch Dale's podcast, Strettycast, and I've dropped the link in the video description as well. So do check that out as well. Himself, Brian, and the lads over there do very good work over there as well. So do check that out as well. And as always, guys, we'll be back later on the week. If anything does crop up with United news, myself and Mark will come on and have a chat about it as well. So I hope everyone stays safe. Enjoy your evening, and thanks very much for tuning in. Hope you all have a good day.
Thanks, Keane.